Are you doing this with your hi-hats? Whether or not you are, if you're learning or new to the drums and you're looking for how to set up your hi-hats, you are in the right place with this video. Hey, Evan here with the Two Musician, where we are here to help drummers unlock their playing freedom and motivation, and just everyday questions like how do you set up your hi-hats? In this video, we're going to be putting these hi-hats together completely. I'm going to show you how I have mine positioned and just give you optimal tips to get the best from your hi-hats. So let's go. So I just set one of my hi-hat clutches down on the floor tom. I have my stand disassembled here. I'm taking the hi-hat base with the pedal and setting it up so the hi-hat pedal is parallel and right next to my double kick pedal. I'm just making sure it's flat and not wobbly. I have my hi-hat pedal set up so it's similarly angled like my kick pedal for optimum playing. And then I'm just taking the pull rod and screwing that into the hi-hat base. Word of caution though, if your hi-hat is having trouble opening or closing, it could be that the pull rod has loosened. So just make sure that is tightened because it can loosen and it can happen during shows and when you're playing and least expect it. And then we're taking this upper part of the hi-hat stand here. This is gonna go over the pull rod and the bottom hat sits on top of this felt. But do you wanna know what this angle adjustment knob is for? Well, it's pretty magical. More on what that does here shortly. So as I mentioned, we're just gonna put this top part over the pull rod. It's nice, I have this little stop lock to keep the height the same. Onto the cymbals, the bottom hi-hat is gonna go bell side down on top of the hi-hat stand. Usually they'll be labeled top or bottom hi-hat. If they aren't labeled, there's a couple different ways we can determine which one's the bottom hi-hat. Number one, the heavier cymbal will be the bottom hat. If you can't tell the weight, number two, the higher pitched cymbal is the bottom hat and the lower pitched one is the top hat. Bottom hat, bell side down. All right, onto the top hat. So I have two different hi-hat clutches I'm gonna go over here. This first one I don't use anymore. It's a traditional hi-hat clutch. And then this one, it has a lock nut on it. We'll discuss that here shortly. But first, the traditional hi-hat clutch, you're gonna unscrew this bottom nut here on the hi-hat clutch. You're gonna drop it shortly after that. After you remove that bottom nut, you're left with these two felts here on the clutch. You're gonna go ahead and remove that first one. And on the clutch, bell side toward the felt is how the top hi-hat's gonna go on this clutch. You're then gonna place that felt that you took off back over the threaded clutch, underside of the bell. Then you'll take that bottom nut you took off and tighten that back on the underside of the bell as well. Be sure not to over tighten, but also, do you want a super loose hat? The two tension nuts that are sandwiched over the top of the bell can be adjusted to either tighten or loosen the top hat. You tighten the bottom one closer to the felt and hi-hat bell, and then you tighten the one above it up against it to secure for tighter hats. And then you just do the opposite if you want more loose hats, you loosen it. I tighten mine a bit. I find I have way more control and less lag in my hi-hat response and timekeeping with my left foot. Then you'll just loosen the wing nut on top of the clutch just to ensure that it can slide down over the pull rod, and then bingo bango, now we can make the adjustments. So this angle adjustment knob is really important to us for a few reasons, but before we delve into those, there are some specific hi-hat FAQs I wanted to dive into, so enjoy this high-speed setup as I switch my top hi-hat back to my favorite clutch, which includes a lock nut. So, number one, it's often stressed to have no metal-on-metal contact with top hi-hat cymbals, which is what cymbal sleeves are good for, even the bottom one on the bottom hi-hat. But the threaded clutch makes this statement not true because the top hi-hat cymbal mounting hole has no protection, which can cause keyholing on your top hi-hat cymbal. I personally don't use anything, I just make sure it's not too loose. Keyholing should be minor if it's not too loose. But this lock nut that I'm using on this other clutch that I'm switching back to ensures that my top hi-hat won't loosen. I just have to make sure the tension nut on the bell is snug as well. A lot of drummers will either use electrical tape or some form of rubber casing similar to what's on wire to protect the top hi-hat. Number two, the wing nut on top of the hi-hat clutch, it's probably best to be facing away from you so you don't accidentally loosen it with your stick by hitting it when playing. Some drummers may have the issue with this wing nut also, and you may be having it, is it may loosen on you. And so this may either be you need a new wing nut or a better clutch, but it's happened to all drummers at one point in time, and it is frustrating. And number 3, lastly, I just want to make sure that the hi-hat is as comfortably close to the snare drum as possible and lower. No one size fits all drummers are different, I'm always going to say that, but my hi-hats are like 5 inches or so away from the rim of the snare, so I can just find I play a lot faster like that. And I'm just showing the different clutches right here. The black and red one is the Tama one with the lock nut that I highly recommend. So setting the hi-hat, we just push down the pull rod by pressing down the hi-hat pedal and then tighten the wing nut to your desired top hi-hat position. So a couple different popular positions here. The first position is a lot of heavier drummers, say metal drummers, rock drummers, and even funk drummers will barely have their hi-hats open. Specifically for metal drummers and hard rock drummers, it just really helps out being able to switch your left foot between the left double kick pedal and the hi-hat pedal. Also, this minimal spacing in top and bottom hi-hat create the perfect sizzle sound. But you know what helps that sizzle even more? The adjustment knob below the bottom hi-hat that we've been talking about. You tighten that toward the bottom hat, it angles that side and that'll touch the top hat. This also helps eliminate overtones, and it just gives us a really nice sloshy hi-hat sound, which is perfect for those styles of music and funk music and just being able to get way more bark for quick hi-hat raises. And then the second setting, which could be used across a variety of different genres, let's say jazz or big band, many drummers want more spacing between their hi-hats, say an inch or 2 between that top and bottom hi-hat. This is going to allow more audible hi-hat chick sounds, better timekeeping, and just varied hi-hat crashes. It's going to offer a different feel, and depending on your drumming style or the genres that you're playing, you want many choices here. So you would have to tighten that bottom hat adjustment knob a little more due to the increased spacing with this setting, and you'll still have a nice slosh because your hats are touching on that angle as well.